Thank you for watching this shiur. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just select subscribe at the bottom of the video screen and then hit the bell in order to receive notifications when new shiurim are uploaded. If anyone would like to sponsor one of the shiurim in memory of someone, or for a refuah shlema for somebody, or for a schus for someone, please send me a message or email me at stankran@sbcglobal.net. Thank you. So the first thing I want to do is explain this Rashi, but it becomes a little bit complicated. It's all on the sheet, just about. Matter of fact, I don't even need the Gemara because everything on there. We will get to the Gemara later. I think we'll do an Amida Gemara later too, to just finish up. No shiur next week or the week after. People are going out of town, so we're going to take a break. Now, Rashi, so the main point of the Mishnah was that you have different dates in which the Megillah can be read. So the 14th and the 15th, which are explicitly stated in the Megillah Esther. So the 14th for non-walled cities, the 15th for a walled city. Then the Mishnah states a chiddush that the kfarim, that the villagers who would not have the means to always come to the town to hear the Megillah, and the Chachamim wanted to help them because they always came and helped the city people by bringing food and water, so they gave them a special dispensation, allowed them to read the Megillah earlier on the Yom HaKnisa, the Monday or Thursday preceding Purim. Now, the question is where and when and who read on the day preceding Purim.
Before you get to that, I have a question.
Yeah.
There's the thing in there about the large town, the small town, and then a large town has 10 lazy men.
That's the next Mishnah,
Oh,
right?
That's
this. There's three things. There's three types of a city. You have a krach, which is a walled city.
Okay.
Kricha is a binding. It's something that's enclosed. You have an ir, a large city. A large city usually has a shul, a court meeting there. A large city is a place of commerce.
Okay.
And then you have the kfar, which is the villages, which are farmlands.
Okay.
Now, the people in the villages did not go to Minyan every day. So what they did was they would go on Monday and Thursday, according to the way Rashi explains, they would go to the larger cities, either because the courts met there, and if they had a dispute, a business dispute, they'd have to go there, or they'd go also for Kriyas Torah, they'd go to hear the Torah reading. The reason why Rashi may not mention the Torah reading is because he might not have held that they had to go hear the Torah reading. In other words, there's a mitzvah, but they wouldn't have necessarily had to, but they did have to go if they had to be in court, and therefore once they were in the city on Monday and Thursday, so they would have the Megillah read for them. Now, the question is, so what was the procedure? There are three versions in the Rishonim as to what transpired for these small towns. The first one is what we read in Rashi, and Rashi's opinion is also stated by the Rabbi Bartanur on the Mishnah, and that is that the small cities were not Bekian, they were not educated, and they couldn't read the Megillah. They didn't have a Balkore, they didn't have somebody who could read the Megillah for them. So what the rabbi said was, if you're going to the large city anyway, and we've got Balkores and we have a minyan there, you'll read the Megillah. You can only read the Megillah, if you're reading it early, you have to have a minyan. And they didn't necessarily have a minyan in the kfar. So you're going to be accomplishing two things in the large city. A, you'll have a minyan, and B, you'll have Bekiyam. You'll have somebody who has the knowledge to read the Megillah for you. So that's what Rashi says. Look at the Rashi. That's how Rashi learns. So what Rashi learns is that the kfarim are hearing the Megillah in the large city on Monday and Thursday, and it's being read by one of the members of the large city who knows how to read it. Rashi says, Shakvarim Mischantzen, the first one, Li'ayaros Mishpat.
I got it.
The kfarim come to the large cities for the courts, for judgment. Lefi Shabbate Dinan Yoshrin Ba'ayaros B'Sheni B'Chamishi Katakaras Ezra. Because in the larger cities, you had the Bate Dinim there. Now, one of the problems that's raised by the Rishonim is as Sid mentioned, the definition of a large city later is going to be 10 batlanim, 10 people that are sitting in the shul. Who said 10 batlanim makes you have a court?
The translation I read said lazy men.
No, batlanim, even though in modern Hebrew, batlin is a... But basically, 10 batlanim means that they're not working at everyday jobs. They're sitting in the shul. So they could be, they say, a court. 3 could be a judge. Then you have 2 people to carry out what the judge does. You have a malametina. There's a whole system of, you need a minimum of 10 dedicated workers, Jewish workers, to run a Jewish community, okay? So if you have that, it's considered a large city. So the question is, Rashi, though, says it depends upon them going in to the city for mishpat. So some want to say that 10 really is the minimum of where you would have the ability of really having an established court. Now, the kfarim, this is the main point in Rashi. Hakfarim einun bekiyan likros. The kfarim are not educated enough to read the Megillah on their own. V'tzrichan shikra'enu lahem echad mi b'nei ha'ir. They require somebody from the city who's knowledgeable to read the Megillah for them. So they have 2 choices. What are their 2 choices? They could either hear it early, or they could come back to the city on Purim, and then that means they're going to have to make 2 trips, because they're going anyway on Monday and Thursday. So when they went on Monday and Thursday, and they weren't on the farm, they missed a day or at least a half a day of work. Now they're going to have to miss another day or half a day of work to go back again on Purim. So Rashi says the Chachamim did not bother them. All right, Lishacher means to remain. In others, they'd have to stay. Let's say they came in on Monday and Purim's on Wednesday, so they could stay, or they could have left Ulavo b'yom arba'asar and then came back on the 14th. But the rabbis didn't want to do that, so therefore they gave them a special dispensation. They could read it early. That's the way that Rashi learns. So the kfarim are reading it in the large city, and they're hearing it from a city member and not from one of their own people, because they themselves don't know how to read it. That's simply how Rashi learns and how the Rabbi Bartanur learns. Now, the problem is, if you looked at number 3, there is a Yerushalmi, and the Yerushalmi says, Ben Ir Mahu Sheyotzi Ben Krach. Now, if a person lives in a regular city, and he heard the Megillah on the 14th, or let's say maybe he missed it, and then he goes into a walled city on the 15th, and now he wants to be motzi a person who's from the walled city. Can he do it? So the Gemara says, Yava Kahada, do we compare it to the case of Kol Sheina Mechuya B'Davra Eina Motzi? Now the halach is, if you're not obligated in a mitzvah, you can't be motzi. You can't dispense somebody else's obligation. For example, if you're a deaf person, or let's say a child, and you blow the shofar, since you're not obligated in the mitzvah, so you can't be motzi other people. If they hear you blowing the shofar, they're not yotzei. So here also, the person in the walled city cannot, the non-walled city can't read it on the 15th. He's supposed to read it on the 14th. Can he read it for a person in the walled city on the 15th? Ben krach ma'u sheyotzi es ben ir yidei chavasa v'yavi kahara kol she'eno chai v'davreinu motzi es arab yidei chavasan o yavi kahara. However, the opposite, the krach, the person in the walled city that goes into a non-walled city, is he also unable to read it for the non-walled city? Or the Amar Reb Chelbo b'shem Reb Chia hakol yotzim be'arba asar shizman kriyaso. Or a walled city is different, because the 14th really is Purim. They celebrated the 14th too in the time of Shushan. So maybe B'di'evad they would be Yotzi on the 14th. The Yerushalmi doesn't answer it, but the Rishonim say that the answer is that they cannot be Motzi. A Ben Krach cannot be Motzi Ben Kfar. Now, according to this text of the Yerushalmi, there is a slight difficulty with Rashi, because if a Ben Krach cannot be Motzi a Ben Ir, and a Ben Ir can't be Motzi a Ben Krach, then it makes sense, even though they're both obligated in Purim, but since their dates of reading the Megillah are different, they can't be Yotze each other. So then we would think ipso facto a Kfar, should not be able to be Yotze through a city person, because a city person can't read it early. So if the villagers go to the city and the city person reads for them, well, how are they Yotze? According to Rashi, they're Yotze. How could they be Yotze? How could a city person read it for a Ben Kfar when we know a Ben Krach can't read it for a Ben Ir, and vice versa? Now, that would be the Kila Shako, the Stipler says that there's a big difference. And the big difference is that when is a Kfar really supposed to read it? When is a villager supposed to read the Megillah? The extra days were added later. And even if you say Anshe Knesset HaGedolah added them, but they're not obligated to read it earlier. Their real obligation is when? On the 14th. So they're really considered Ben Ir. So therefore, but the person on the 15th and the person on the 14th are two totally different obligations. For example, a person on the 15th will make the suit on the 15th. The person on the 14th will make the suit on the 14th. When will the Kfar make the Suda? Also on the 14th, even if he hears it earlier, but the Suda, the Simchas Purim is still on the... So he's really connected to a Ben Ir. So that's how the Stipler wants to answer Rashi and say that even if the Yerushalmi holds a Ben Krach can't be Yotze a Ben Kfar, and I'm sorry, Ben Krach can't be Yotze a Ben Ir, and Ben Ir can't be Yotze a Ben Krach, but a Kfar is different because his basic obligation is with the Ir, with the city, and therefore he would be Yotze. Now, according to this shot, it will come out that if, let's say, a small village is near a walled city, and they went into the walled city on Monday and Thursday, they wouldn't be Yotze if the walled city person read for them, because the Kfar is really part of the Ir, is really part of a regular town, and only a regular townsperson could read for them. Now, that would be very good. The Rishonim wouldn't present a terrible problem if that were the text. However, Tosos and others have a different text in the Rishonim, and there's a Tosos in Yevamos. I'm going to read the Tosos in Yevamos, and I'll tell you what the Gemara in Yevamos says. The Gemara has a problem. There's what we mentioned before called lo tiskodedu, which means you shouldn't have differences in law. Everybody should be on the same page. You shouldn't have some Jews doing one thing and some doing another. Now the Gemara concludes a minhag is different because minhagim have to do with the people's customs, but in law, when the Chachamim are setting up the halacha should be one for all and all for one. There shouldn't be differences. So the Gemara asks about the Ben Ir and the Ben Krach. How could by Megillah you have these differences? So according to some, the Gemara is actually asking on the Kfar and the Ir, but the majority of the Rishonim learn is talking about the Krach and the Ir. So the Gemara's answer, the Gemara gives two answers. One answer is that lo tiskodedu only applies if it's all in the same city. But if different cities are doing different things, that's fine. One city could do Beis Shammai, and one city could do Beis Hillel. It's only in the same city. So since the Krach and the Ir are two different cities, it's not lo tiskodedu. Now, the other answer it says is that even in the same city, it's only if it's all part of the same Beis Din. So Tosos and other Rishonim ask, well, if you're telling me that in the same city you can't make a distinction, then when the Kfar comes into the Ir, they're in the same city and we're reading two different readings. So that should be lo tiskodedu. So the Tosos answers, look at what Tosos, so Tosos says, Ki amrinan lo, the number 2. There's sheets there that are... So on number 2, so Tosa says, Ki amrina lo tiskodedu, ki gon shtei bate dina b'ir achas. V'im tomer, my teretz mi Megillah, de b'ir achas hayu korin le b'nei ha'ir, b'yud dalet, b'nei kfarim hayu makdimin liyom ha'knisa. So Tosa says, that's very good if you tell me lo tiskodedu doesn't apply in two separate cities. That's good for a walled city versus a non-walled city. But for the kfarim, the villagers that come into the city and they read it early, but the rest of the city isn't reading it early, you're in one city and you're doing two different things. Why is that not lo tiskoda? So the Omer Harav Rabbi Chaim, the B'nai Kfarim Hayukorim Be'iram. So here we have a new pshat. Who said that B'nai Kfarim read in the city? They actually read in the farm. And in other words, what they had was they had a shul in their kfar. But the thing is, they didn't go to shul. They were too busy on the fields. So the only time they visited the synagogue was on Monday and Thursday. But the shul was actually in the kfar. So now you don't have lo tiskoda because they actually didn't read it in the city. They read it in their small towns. So why is it called Yom HaKanisa? Yom HaKanisa implies what? That they're coming together in another city. They're going, to be konesis, to be, what do you call it? Gather. They're gathering. And the implication is they're gathering in another city. So it says, no. Because they didn't go to shul every day. So the only days they went to shul were Monday and Thursday. Therefore, it's called Yom HaKanisa because they only gathered together in their kfar on Monday and Thursday. Otherwise, they didn't see each other because they had fields and everything. So Likros HaTorah, V'chei nir Yamri B'Yerushalmi, the Ben Ir Einu Motzi Ben Krach. Because it says a Ben Ir cannot be Yotzei a Ben Krach, and therefore the same thing would be that they couldn't be Yotzei a Kfar, and therefore they couldn't read it in the city anyway, because who would read it for them? If the person in the city read for them, he's not Chayav yet, so he couldn't be Motzi them. The Kol Sheina Mechuyev B'Davar Ein Motzi Acher Midei Chavasa B'Kim Shnei Kfarim Rayu B'Kiyan Likros. The B'nai Kfarim were B'Kiyam, they did know, not like Rashi. Vadi HaYukorim B'Iram. So we have a machlokas here, Rashi and Tosas. Now, if you'll notice in parentheses, I put the Bach. The Bach has a different text in the Yerushalmi, and the text of the Bach is the Ben Ir Eino Motzian, not Ben Krach, Eino Motzian Ben Kfar. That presents a question to Rashi. Now, our Gemaras don't say Kfar. Our Gemaras say Krach. If you look in our Yerushalmi, it says Ben Krach. So Rashi is okay because he'll say, it's different. A Ben Krach, you're not Yotze because it's two separate Chiyuvim. But the Kfar is really Chayav on the 14th, so he's really the equivalent in Chiyuv of a Ben Ir. But if you have the text in Yerushalmi that Ben Ir cannot be Motzi a Ben Kfar, then it says explicitly against Rashi that they can't be Motzi. And then Rashi would be a problem. So Rashi could not have had that Girsa. Tosos has that girsa according to the Bach, and therefore Tosos argues with Rashi. A Ben Ir can't be motzi a person can't be motzi a villager, and therefore it must be that the villagers had their own reader, and they must have read it in the village itself. And the reason it's called Yom HaKanisa, not because they gathered in the city, but rather they gathered in their own little hamlets for Kriyas HaTorah, not for Mishpat, but for Kriyas HaTorah. Rashi says for Mishpat because they came to the city, and that's where the courts were in the city. So you have a machlokas between Rashi and Tosos, whether they read it in their own little kfar or they read it in the city. If they read it in the city and a city person read it for them, the question is, so how could they be Yotze? The city person isn't Chayiv yet. So we mentioned what the Kilush Yaakov says, that they really are akin to a city person because they're doing the Suda on the 14th, and they really theoretically, if they wanted to, could read it on the 14th, not on the 15th. It's only a Ben Krach and a Ben Ir can't be motzi each other because they have two separate dinim of Purim. But a Ir and a Kfar are basically one and the same, even though the Ben Ir is not Yotzi. Now, what Tosos would hold is simply this, that the way you're motzi somebody is if you're a Yotze. But since the Ben Ir, when he reads it, he's not Yotze. He gets a 0. So how can he be motzi another person? He himself is not Yotze. How can somebody who's not Yotze himself be motzi somebody else? So that's the problem also that Tosos would have with Rashi. But you have this machlokas.
Is there
Now,
a question about it, or do you want to... Should I hold the questions to the end?
Can you hold it for one more minute? I want to just bring down two more opinions. First of all, the Rambam agrees with Tosos. Look at number 5. Okay, the Rambam says, B'nei kfarim she'enu miskapsim b'bate kinesios. He doesn't say be'ir. The Rambam says the B'nei kfarim get together where? In their shuls. Ela b'sheni b'chamishi titnulim she'yu magdimim v'korim b'yom ha'kanisa. So the Rambam doesn't say they went to the cities. The Rambam says they, Yom HaKanisa, like Tosa says, they gathered in their shuls. In the Parish Mishnah...
They didn't go to shuls.
No, on Sheni Chamishi they did, but not during the rest of the week. And that's why it's called Yom Kanisa, because that's when they gathered together. The Rambam in the Parish Mishnah says, Yom HaKanisa, hu Yom Sheni, v'Yom Chamisha, lefishi anshe hakvar miskapsen bahem. Those are the days they got together, Lishmoa Sefer Torah. So the Rambam seems to hold like Tosos. The Meiri says explicitly the Rambam holds like Tosos. That's number 7. V'ikar hadavorim bin Yezeh, the main shot in this subject, in this idea, is Masha Kasa Bo Gedolei HaMachabrim. It's what Gedolei HaMachabrim means, the great author. That's the Rambam. Gedolei HaMachabrim is the Meiri's, nickname for the Rambam. Everybody has a nickname. Rashi is Gedolei HaRabbanim. The Rambam is Gedolei HaMachabrim, the great author, the great, author. V'hu shebnei kfarim lo yu nichnasim b'ayaros. The kfarim did not go to the cities. Lo l'mikra Megillah, lo l'kriyas Torah. They didn't go for Megillah or kriyas Torah. Chazak al b'nei Yisrael shebekiyim heim. It was a chazaka that Jewish people do know. They're educated. Most Jews are educated. Im shalir, im shal kfar. It doesn't matter where they live, even if they live in a village. Most Jews have an education and they could read the Megillah. They used to gather in their own villages, l'kriyas Torah. V'shar hayamim lo yu miskapsim klal. They didn't get together for minyan during the rest of the week. Why? Because they were too busy working. So if they're getting together in their own cities, the obvious question would be what? So let them read it on the 14th, on Purim. If they know how to read it, Rashi, we understand. The rabbis let them read it early because they couldn't read it in their own cities. They would have had to come into the city, and it would have been a schlep to make them come back to the city again. But according to Tosos and according to the Rambam, they're reading it in the kfar, so let them get together on the 14th and read it bismano. So he says, the rabbis were lenient and let them read it on the days they were gathering together anyway on Monday and Thursday. Because they're already losing a day of work. We didn't want them to lose the day of Purim, the 14th, because in the time of the Chazal at the beginning, there was no Isser, there was no prohibition of working on Purim. Shadayim lohei sasham klalas or shalabaya. There wasn't the curse of Abaya, which means there wasn't the halacha that Abaya later said nobody should work on Purim. So that's a halacha now. We try not to work on Purim, even though it's not asur b'malacha. But Abai said you won't see a siman bracha, etc. So shaloli asas malacha b'Purim. But before Abai came along, which is in the time of the Amoraim, so we didn't want these people to lose another day of work. So the rabbis let them read the Megillah early. So it wasn't because they were not Pekiyim or they didn't know how to read, as Rashi explains, but it's rather they shouldn't lose another day of work. Why did we give them this special thing? The city people too. Because since they worked very hard during the year to bring the city people the food and the water and everything else, we're going to let them work the day of Purim and we'll allow them to read it earlier. So we have so far two pshatim. Now there's one more explanation of what went on, and that's number 4. And then I'll take your question before I give an answer in Rashi. But look at number 4. V'iksha Reb Chaim, that's the same one from the Tosos in Yuvamos. Lama amrina magdimin liyom ha'knisa. Korili lo tiskoredu, lo sasu agurus agurus, shahari b'nei ayaros, gedolos korin leb'nei hakfarim b'yom yod aleph, ein korin liyatzram b'yom yod daled. You have the city people, according to Rashi, reading it for the villagers on one day and reading it for themselves another day. That's lo tiskoredu. Ubakamadi Yavamos Amarava Kiamrin Lotus Gardu Kagom based in Achas Be'er Achas. So Poligmoric at every Beishamai, Poligmoric at every Beisilo. Vim Koran Nami, Shabanei Ha'ir, Koran Lebanei Hakfarm, Biral Beis Yagimel, the Koran Liasram, the Yom Yadalit, Koran Bay Lotus Gardu, Havik Beis Echad, Be'er Achas, the Poligmoric Beishamai, Poligmoric Beisilo. It's worse than that, he says. It's like one court in one city doing two different things because you have the same shul, the same people, and one day they're reading it for one and one day they're reading it for the other, which makes it look like two different Torahs. So he answers, Yomer Rabbeinu, the Lav Kushahi, it's no question, Klal, at all. Shari Iker HaTakana Kacha Yabi Me Mordechai ve'Esther, because that was the Takana in the time of Mordechai ve'Esther. Kivin Sharot Sorach B'Davar. Since they saw that there was a need, Elu v'elu modem shekorin lebnei hayaros biyom yodalu b'nei kfarim yesh lahatim v'achi lo shayichan lo tiskodedu l'havi kishtei Torahs. It isn't lo tiskodedu because the original takana was they realized there was going to be a problem with these small towns and they allowed them to read it early. So they took that into consideration. Others, even if it's normally lo tiskodedu, that was part of the dispensation. You don't have to worry about it. Behind Diki Amar Hasu Rabbi Yochanan L'Reish Lakish Adkan Lo Shanis Malkum Shenagoli Asos Malach etc. The Lo Chashav Agudos Kivin Sheshnei Amodim Shivrizah Osam Kach Ubirzah Osam Kach Vim Hayu Ben Malkum Zeh Mishtakeya B'Zeh Yosek Mosam. Now, what he seems to imply is that Lo Tiskodedu usually implies where you have a machlokas. So one person goes like Beis Shammai, one person goes like Beis Hillel. So there are two reasons behind Lo Tiskodedu, two possible reasons. One is it looks like two different Torahs. All right, well, this could look that way also, but the answer is no, because that's how the original Takana was. They didn't worry about it. But the other problem with Lo Tiskodedu is it creates fighting between Jewish people.
Why?
One goes like Beis Shammai, one goes like Beis Hillel. Lo Tiskodedu, making two different, going in the same city, like two different opinions, will create disharmony in the city. However, what the Ron is saying is, that's only if it's a machlokas, that A says we're right and B isn't right, or B says we're right, then they fight. But if we're saying the kfarim are allowed to read early, we're not arguing with that. If we lived in a kfar, we'd read early also. We're not saying they're wrong. It's only agudos if there's a fight between the two parties and disharmony. But here, since everybody agrees that the kfarim could read early, therefore it's not considered lo tiskodedu. Now, according to the Ron, though, who's reading it for them? It seems like the Bnei Ha'ir are reading it for them, but we don't have to worry about lo tiskodedu because A, there's no argument, and B, in other words, even if they're not chayav, but that could have been part of the original takana. Matter of fact, I think that the Ritva says it explicitly. Number 11. If you look at number 11, the Ritva says explicitly, "Uli inyan kfarim kashen makdim liyom haknisa ikami rabustav." And that's from our rabbis. Zatzal. Meaning Rashi. Mandis Savar Shekei Shaben Kfar. I'm sorry, not Rashi. Shaben Kfar Hu Shakar Lehem Lo Ben Ir O Ben Krach Shari Ben Ir O Ben Krach Lo Higiyas Mano V'Kol Sheina Mechuyev B'Davar Eina Motzei Acherim. That's the sheet of the Tosos and Yevamos and the Rambam. V'Chitei Me'im Ken Yikru B'Makoman. So let them read it in the Kfar. Halesa She'ena Miskapsen B'Asara. So he says a different thing. So he says that they read it themselves, but they had to read it in the city. In other words, according to the Rambam, they read it themselves in the kfar, in the village. According to the Ran, they read it in, according to the Tosos and Yevamos, they read it in the village. According to the Ritva, they couldn't read it in the village, because no matter how hard they tried, they'd never get a minyan together. It was impossible. So they'd have to read it in the city, but they weren't uneducated people, so they would read it themselves in the city. So he's going to say, since they were their own group, it's not lo tiskodedu, because it's still like two different cities, because they are doing their own thing, but they're just in the city. Umori naru v'sheim rabosav zal. Kosav dekfarma magdim liyom haknisa. Kach isa ikar hatakana shei ben ir kore lehem. Ukachad im chashivi. V'kiven she'adayin hu mischayev lo chashav legamrei kamisha eno mechuyev b'davar. So what he says now is, he said a ben ir actually could read it for the kfar. Why? He's basically like what the Kilish Yaakov says, and the Kilish Yaakov quotes the Ritva that he said he found later that the Ritva said it, because that's how the original takana was, that they allowed them to read for them. They allowed the ben ir to read, even though normally it's eino mechuyev. Now, how could they bend the halacha of eino mechuyev read? That's not a halacha purim. That's a halacha kol Torah kula. Why would they bend that? So he's saying because they are chayev. He said it's similar to a situation of, let's say I make kiddush and then I'm yotze, but now I come home. Let's say in shul, the person is yotze midioraisa kiddush by just saying the parsha of talking about Shabbos by Yichul Shemayim. But then you can go home and make kiddush again anyway to be motzi somebody else. But you're not mechuyev anymore. So he's saying the same thing would be if you're not yet mechuyev as if you were already did the mitzvah. That's what the Ritva says, and therefore they're considered a mechuyev b'davar. They're only not a mechuyev b'davar if they're like a blind person or a deaf person that has no shaychus to the mitzvah at all. Yeah.
You said something. I'm just curious. If you've heard kiddush in shul,
Yes.
then
You could make it again for somebody who didn't. Yes, you could.
You knew the
make
question right then.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, so we have three possibilities. All right. We have basically three possibilities over here. A, Rashi, a ben ir reads it for a kfar in the city. The problem is not so much lo tisgodedu because either that was ikar takana, but the problem is if the ben ir himself isn't yotze, how can he be motzi somebody else? The fact that he's not chayiv yet means it's not like kiddush. I am chayiv in kiddush at this point. I just already did the mitzvah. But here he's not even chayiv yet. Even if he reads a Megillah, he won't be yotzi. How can he be motzi somebody else? Then you have the Rambam and Tosas and Yevamos, who holds that they read it in the kfar, and therefore there was no problem lo tisgodedu. There was no problem of being motzi because they read it for themselves. And then you have a third shita, is that they themselves read it, but they read it in the city in order to have a minyan. So it's called Yom HaKanisa because they came to the city, and that's why they didn't make them come back again, and they couldn't read it in the kfar because they wouldn't have a minyan in the kfar, and you can only read it early with the minyan. So therefore, they allowed them to read it early, but they didn't require them to come back again because they didn't want to be bothered them to come back to the city. So these are the three opinions. The question is, what is a pshat in Rashi that a ben ir could read it for a ben kfar? So we have one possibility, because that was a takana. Don't ask questions. That's how Mordechai and Esther made the takana. However, what if the takana came later? What if Mordechai and Esther just said you could read extra days, and then the later rabbis decided to apply that to the situation of a kfar? So how would they allow that the reading in the city is not part of the takana? If you say Mordechai and Esther made it, we have a question. There are two ways of understanding the reading it earlier. Did that come? It says Kula Anshe Knesset Gadol Tiknu. The whole thing was from Anshe Knesset Gadol or Mordechai and Esther. It's the same thing. Does it mean they said a kfar reads it early, or did they just say here's extra days? If you can't read it on the 14th and 15th, you have extra days. Matter of fact, the Netziv wants to say that the original concept was if somebody was going to go on a trip and wouldn't have the Megillah, that's what Mordechai and Esther were saying. If you can't do it the 14th and 15th, you have a couple of extra days that will allow you to do it. They weren't even talking about the kfar because the Yom HaKanisa didn't come until later. It didn't come until the time of Ezra, which was a little bit after Mordechai and Esther, at least, especially according to Rashi, that it was for the Batei Dinim. They didn't start coming up until after Ezra's time. So if Mordechai and Esther only allowed extra days and the later rabbis came and said, you know what, we've got the extra days and we've got a problem with the kfar, so we'll apply the extra days that Mordechai and Esther gave us, that leeway, and apply to the kfar. But then how could they allow a ben ir to read it? That's not part of the original takana that a ben ir could read it. So But if you say that Mordechai and Esther did it, then yes, you could say that was part of the original takana. So that's one way out of Rashi, is that was part of the original takana, Mordechai and Esther, and they took into account that a ben ir is not a mechuya, but we'll allow it because we're allowing them to read it early anyway. So we're already bending the law, so we'll bend it in this thing also. Not only that, there's another problem. What about at night? We'll see that momentarily. When did the kfar hear the Megillah at night? You have to hear the Megillah at night and in the daytime. So the Ran says, the Ran on the Riv says it's quite possible that they bent the law that too, and they said you don't have to hear it at night. So if they're already bending the law in a million different ways, then who says they can't allow a ben ir to read it for the kfar? They already don't even have to hear it at night, according to the one explanation in the Ran. So that's one possibility of Rashi. So one possibility in Rashi is there was part of the original takana, and they bent the law and basically said, don't worry, we'll allow the ben ir to read for you. Another possibility, if you look at number 8, this is Tosas Rabbi Kveger on the Mishnayos. Baharav Divrei Amaskala Shakfarim. All right, the Rav and the Mishnayos looks like Rashi. Number 8. Shikra lehem echad ubetosos yavamos. Daf Yud Dalet Amud Aleph that we quoted. Kasu b'shem Yerushalmi de ben ir eni yochel lahotzi osam. A ben ir cannot be motzi a kfar. The mikra enim b'chuya b'daber. V'kein chaz of Haran. The Echad mi hakfar korioso. I'm sorry, the Echad mi hakfar korioso. So the Ran says that one of the people in the kfar themselves read it. So he's saying if you have that girsa in the Yerushalmi that a ben ir can't read it for a kfar, how does Rashi totally contradict the Yerushalmi? V'efsher demasha kasav Rashi v'arav shikru echad mi b'nei ir. Now he says a big chiddush. You know what it means? The ben ir reads it, and then guess what happens? Hainu shuhu makre. He reads it for the ben kfar. V'heim onim achra mila b'mila, and then they repeat every word that he says. So they're repeating. So they're really reading it for themselves. Now, what's the problem with that? You have to read it from a kosher Megillah. Where's our Megillah? The guy who's reading it is reading it from a kosher Megillah, and they're repeating it. So the Gemara says by Hallel, if the people hear it and they repeat it, they could, for example, if a woman reads Hallel or a child reads Hallel, so the Mishnah in Sukkah says you could still be Yosei if you repeat word for word. But Hallel doesn't have to be read from a sefer. Hallel, you could read it by heart if you wanted. So, of course, if somebody who's not mechuyev reads it and you repeat it, you're Yotzei. But the Megillah has to be from a sefer. So how could they just repeat what they're hearing? So the Baruch Tam, which is... So Mrs. Rivkin Shalom was related to the Baruch Tam. The Baruch Tam says, if you look at number 10, the Torah Yevon says the same answer as Rabbi Kveger, that they repeated it. So the Baruch Tam says, number 10, what they mean to say is Sha'anu acharav mitoch Megillah. They read it from a Megillah. In other words, at least one person from the Kfar had a kosher Megillah. He hears it from the Ben Ir. He looks at the Megillah and he reads it, and then they're Yotzei. So there has to be a Ben Kfar reading it from a kosher Megillah. Shaya lifneim b'kol teva b'teva sheshamu korabi atzmam. But Tocha Megillah, they're reading it from a Megillah. Dim Lokain, because if not, Havi Balpeh would be reading it by heart, and you're not Yotzei. So this is one pshat that they say in Rashi. The Rashi held that, but it's a very strange pshat, because the main part of it is missing from Rashi. And that is that the Ben Ir reads it for the Kfar, but the Kfar repeats it word for word from their kosher Megillah. Well, Rashi doesn't say that. All right, so that's part of the problem. All right, so, but that's another possibility in Rashi.
So they actually have a kosher Megillah in front of them.
That they actually, or at least one person would have a kosher Megillah and would read it from that, one of the B'nai Kfar. Right. All right, now, the other possibility is that, let me see if there's any, well, then we'll do that last thing. The other possibility I would say is this. There's a halacha of Shomeya Kiyona. Now, how does Megillah work? When you hear it, normally, what's a halacha of Shomeya Kiyona? If I hear you make Kiddush, and I listen, I'm Yotzei. So the Gemara says, even if you don't answer Amen, l'chatchila you have to answer Amen. But even if you don't answer Amen, b'diavad you're Yotzei, Shomea Kiona you're Yotzei, even if you don't answer Amen. Now, the Grashita is that if you don't answer Amen, you have to understand what the words mean. If you answer Amen, you don't have to understand what the words mean, all right? But the halach is Shomea Kiona, theoretically you have to answer something. And the Gemara brings a pasuk in Tanakh by Yoshiyahu, had Shaphan read from the Sefer Torah, and it said that he read it, but he didn't read it. And then later, so the Gemara says, well, maybe it was like he read it. I mean, it's attributed to him. So the Gemara says maybe he read it after Shaphan. Maybe he read it word for word like we're saying now. And the Gemara says, but then the pasuk says that Hashem said, because you listened to the words of the Torah, you're being rewarded. So he didn't repeat it. He just heard it. So even though he didn't answer anything, you're Yotzei. So the Rasha says, why don't they bring another very simple proof? By the way, this is mentioned in a sefer on Shomea Kiona, some fellow in Lakewood wrote. I forgot the name. I wish I should say B'Shem Omro. But he brings down this Rashash, but it's really the Rashash who says it. So he quotes the Rashash. And the Rashash says that why do they bring another? There's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah Mishnah that says if you're walking by a shul and you hear them reading the Megillah, and you have kavanah to be Yotzei, you're Yotzei. Now, you're not answering anything. And let me ask you another thing. What if you don't understand a word being what's read? Normally, Shomea Kiona, if you don't answer, you have to understand. And you know, according to the Gemara, you don't understand anything. So Megillah doesn't seem to be like Shomea Kiona. It doesn't have the same rules of Shomea Kiona. So the Rasha says a very interesting thing. He said, from there they can't prove that if you don't answer, you're Yotzei. Why? Because by the Megillah, it doesn't say outright you have to read it. It says niskarim. These things are remembered. The main thing of Megillah is to remember the story of Purim. However, you have to remember it through a reading, just like a Malik. You have to remember a Malik, but it has to be read from a pasuk in the Torah. But the Iker mitzvah is remembering Zechiras Amalik. Right, we should be so So the idea of Megillah, he says, is basically niskarim, except we learn out that it just can't be remembered in your head. You actually have to read the words from a sefer, just like by a Malik Mida Rabbanan, you have to read it from a sefer Torah. So he's saying that the fact is it's not Shomea Kiona. Shomea Kiona is when you have to read it. You have to say Kiddush. So if I hear it, it's like I said Kiddush. But there's no halacha that you have to say the Megillah. You have to hear the Megillah and hear the story and remember the incident of Purim and the terrible thing that Haman wanted to do and how we were saved. He's saying, therefore, it doesn't work through the mechanics of Shomea Kiona, and therefore the Rasha says they couldn't bring that as a proof that Shomea Kiona, you don't have to answer. So the fact that you don't answer by Megillah is okay because you're remembering it. All you have to do is hear it from a sefer. So what I was going to say is it could be that Rashi held that since it's not a din in the just an only the Iker thing is the Zechira. It's a little bit of a kvesh though. The Iker thing is the Zechira. It could be the fact that the Ben Ir reads it. Since he's a partially mechuyev, because he's going to become mechuyev, he's not totally displaced from the mitzvah, and especially if we add what the Kila Shakov says, that the kfar is really the equivalent of a Ben Ir because he celebrates Purim on the 14th like a Ben Ir. That's enough of a mechuyev b'davar to consider the reading enough of a zikaron to be yotzei the mitzvah of Purim. So that would be, I think, another way that we could answer Rashi, why they allowed a Ben Ir to read it, because the stress wasn't so much on the reading as it was on Elu Yamim Niskarim, that they should be remembered through a reading, and that's enough. But a Ben Krach, he's already on a different level because he celebrates Purim on the 15th, so he isn't connected to the Ben Ir. But the Ben Ir, isn't connected to the Kfar. But the Ben Ir is connected enough to the Kfar that his reading would be enough to be considered it for his Zikaron. Now, the last thing that I want to do is, if you look at the question what about the nighttime reading? What are we going to do about the nighttime reading? So I'm skipping the Avnei Nezer. You can look at it on your own. He basically brings a Ritva and talks about that. But look at 13 and 14. Let's start with 14. So Megillah Delilah Efsher de Lo Karole B'nei Kfarim. It's possible, the Ran says, this is the Ran on the Rif, that they didn't have to hear the Megillah at night, the Kfarim. We didn't make them hear it at night. The Megillah de Yom Iker, because the main thing is the Megillah in the daytime. Actually, there's no source in the Megillah itself for hearing the Megillah at night. It says Hayamim, the days are remembered and for Purim. Why do we even read the Megillah at night? Because there's a pasuk in Tanakh and Tehillim that says I should cry out to God in the night and in the day, or I should praise God in the night and in the day. So from there we learn, but it's not and that's why according to many Shitas, even though you make Shechiyanu in the nighttime, you have to make Shechiyanu, and that's I think what we paskin when you read the Megillah in the day, because the day is the real chiyuv. Just like you can't be Yotzei Shalach Manas or Suda at night, the daytime is really the main chiyuv. So he said they just told the Kfarim, we're going to dispense with the nighttime reading. You don't have to worry about it. That's one of his things. Just like they allowed him to read earlier, so now, Megillah at night, it may not even be from Mordechai and Esther. It could have been a later takana. So maybe on that they had they didn't have to bring a source. In other words, we bring a source that they could read it early. But if you tell me they don't have to read it at night, what's the source that they don't have to read it at night? And it could be if it was a later takana, they didn't have to worry about it. That the later ones who made the takana reading it at night maybe were the ones that did away with it. I don't know. So Efshar, it's possible, another shot, that even though Megillah is Shelo Bismano, you have to read it with a minion, but the nighttime Megillah would be enough if they read it by themselves. And then they'd read it. Now remember, the Ran held that they were Bikiyam, that they did know how to read, so there was no big deal. They could read it at night. The problem was they didn't have a minion, so that's what they did away with. You don't have to worry about a minion at night because nighttime is not necessarily Pirsume Nisa. Matter of fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, women have to hear Megillah because of Pirsume Nisa. I think there's a shaila whether they have to hear it at night or not, according to some. Because at night is not necessarily Pirsume Nisa. The daytime is Pirsume Nisa. Night is because of calling out to Hashem. Is praising Hashem and calling out to Hashem, it might not be Pirsume Nisa. So that might be what the Ran is saying. Either they dispense with it, because you have to have 10, because it is Pirsume Nisa, or it could be the nighttime Megillah is not Pirsume Nisa, therefore you could read it by Yechidus, and therefore there was no problem, because they knew how to read, they just didn't have the minion according to the Ran. The Meiri says a very interesting thing. Look what he says. El Shemikol Makom Yesh Legalgal El Perusham Tobias Mitzad Acher. There's another problem, he says. She'im ba'ayaros hem korin. So tenach biyom she'nechnasem. B'layla she'avra miha mikara. What about the nighttime? Where are they going to hear it at night? Shahari al korchach mipnei she'enu b'kiyan. Now remember, if you hold like Rashi that they don't know how to read it, so Shema Tomar should be erva yu nichnasen. So one shot is, when they went to the Bate Dinim, or they went to Kriyas Torah, maybe they went at night and stayed overnight in the motel. In other words, they might have gone because they wanted to be there, because the courts met very early in the morning, and they only met until noon. So maybe they had a chap and brine and be there at nighttime. Sha'af b'kol hashana darkam b'kach. Maybe that was their normal modus operandi, to get there in the nighttime, Kedelu Yosham Shakras, to be there early in the morning, L'Kriyas Torah or L'Din, because of the Kriyas Torah or early minyan, or the court, Shari based in Lo Ayu Yoshan Elat Chatzi Ayom, because the basin only was for till noon. Adayin Yesh Lomar, but still in all, you got another problem. What? What about the women? What about the elderly, the children, the people that didn't come for Kriyas Torah, or didn't come to Mishpat? So Yesh Lomer, Nashim B'Zkenim, Mate Aleim, what happened to them? V'dechuke Matzma Lefari, Shahayu Sholchem Lehem Baki, Mi Be'erev, V'kor Lehem Bimkoman, Laila V'yom. Maybe they sent somebody to read the Megillah for them. Maybe they sent somebody to their small town to read the Megillah for them. Now, that's the question. Matter of fact, some want to say that when the Ran says they read it b'yechidus, he might have meant on the 14th too. It's not clear. But it's from the Pshat is that they read it early. And I'll tell you why, because keep reading. V'shema tomar im kein yishluchu oso erev Yudalet. If you're sending somebody to the kfar, then why do you have to read it early? Send them on the 14th. If you're already going to get somebody to come in and read it for them, so why do you have to read it early? The answer is because they can't spend the time hearing it twice. And others are going to the Yom HaKnisa, and for Kriyas Torah, they can't waste 2 days of work. Oshema biyom hakriya hayumolichin habaki. Or maybe, let's say they went in on the 11th. Maybe they brought the baki back with them, and they read the nighttime afterwards. Now, the problem is, but the nighttime we always read first. So look what the Meiri says. He says, B'kora b'layla she'achar kriyas hayom she'af anu haya hadin came. We could have theoretically read it at night after Purim, but the reason we can't is because what does it say in the Megillah? It says Lo Yavor. You can't do Purim later. You can only do Purim earlier. So once the nighttime comes, it's not Purim. But beforehand, you could read it at night. So they could read it the exact opposite. Turning it around. That the daytime reading was first. Then the Baki came home with them, and he read it at the daytime what was left for the women, and then read it at night. So anyway, that's what the Meiri says. So you have this question, but the main thing is, in other words, that the nighttime, it could be the kfarim, 3 possibilities. Either they didn't hear it at night, they did away with it, because the night is not the Iker Mitzvah. Matter of fact, if a person is not feeling well, or a person can't get to shul and they can only hear the Megillah once, daytime. Don't go at night and hear it in the day, because the Iker Mitzvah is in the daytime. Then the other thing, so maybe they didn't hear it at all. Second of all, they might have read it b'yechidus, because it could be that at night it's not Pirsume Nisa, and you're able to hear it and it could be the women don't have to hear it at night. So they only had to worry about during the daytime. And the third thing is that it could be that they sent a baki to the city to read it for the women and the children, or to read it at night for them. But they did it after the normal reading, which the baki would go back with them, and that would be the way out of it. So you have all these possibilities of what the kfar, how the kfar was noeg for Mikra Megillah. Okay, we'll stop here. Next week no shiur. The week after that no shiur. Then we'll start again. When we start, we'll start the next Gemara about the krach, whether you go from the time of Achashverosh or Yoshua ben Nun, and so on and so forth. Thank you for watching this shiur. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just select subscribe at the bottom of the video screen, and then hit the bell in order to receive notifications when new shiurim are uploaded. If anyone would like to sponsor one of the shiurim in memory of someone, or for a refuah shlema for somebody, or for a schuz for someone, please send me a message or email me at stankran@sbcglobal.net. Thank you.